Hi, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you how to do a basic ring. When you're doing the rings, the important thing that you want to have is a mandrel. This is a steel mandrel. We also have plastic mandrels. It's easier for a beginner to work with a plastic mandrel than a steel mandrel. The steel mandrel is really, really heavy when you pick it up. It kind of feels like a baton that you could hurt someone with. It's really heavy, so if you are just getting started, again, use the plastic mandrel. There's also going to be a cost effectiveness in that the plastic mandrels are a lot more, are a lot cheaper to purchase. The metal mandrels are for when you get into hammering your rings and hammering on it. That's when you're definitely going to need a steel mandrel. So the mandrel has different sizes. You're going to have to measure a ring that you already have on or that you've already made in order to figure out what size you are. I'm going to be making a ring here out of 22 gauge wire. And what I've done is I've cut about 10 inches of 22 gauge wire. You can make the rings out of 20 or 22 gauge wire. The beginners, again, 22 gauge is going to be thinner than 20 gauge, so 22 is easier to work with than a 20 gauge wire. I prefer personally to work with 20 gauge when I'm making my rings, but for example's sake, we'll work with this 22. I'm working with a gold wire also so you can see it easier against my silver mandrel rather than working with a silver on silver. So I have 3 beads on my wire. I have 3 different sizes of crystals onto the wire. What I'm going to do to start, or what I've already done to start out with, is I've bent the wire down towards the base when I've put my wire on. So again, about 10 inches of wire, I've put my beads to the middle and I've bent with my pliers, or you can bend with your fingers, those beads down into place. What I'm going to do then is put it onto my mandrel, and I'm going to hold this mandrel. When you first get started, it feels like you need another hand. I'm going to hold my beads to the top of my mandrel, exactly where I need to make them. So I'm going to make about a size 8. I'm taking my wire around my mandrel, right at that 8. I'm taking wire around the whole back. What this is going to do is it's going to create 2 bands to your ring. One band is going to sit above the other when you're working on it. So I have my 2 bands. I'm going to bring both of those wires to the front. When I bring them to the front, I want to make sure that the wire that's on the top stays to the top and the wire that is at the bottom stays to the bottom. Currently my wires are both at the top. I'm going to turn it around, see where I've got my crisscross here, and make sure to correct that. So this wire here needs to come to the bottom. I'm going to put it again right at my 8, and I have the wire that is at the top going across the beads to the top on the other side. The wire that's at the bottom goes across the bottom to the other side. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a box. So I'm taking my wire that's at the bottom and I'm going to cross it towards the top. The wire that's at the top, cross it to the bottom. What this does is holds the beads in place. I'm going to take these a half turn around my beads on each side. So it's going to circle around to get into its original starting position. You can give a little pull at this section to make sure that you're around the ring, but the ring, again, the wires went the whole way around back to their original position, which wraps them around the 3 beads. I'm going to do this one more time, taking the wire from the top all the way around to the bottom and bottom all the way around to the top. If you notice, I'm doing this in segments. I do one side and then the other side. I'm not doing 1 2 times around and then the other. I am going to do side by side. I give it a nice tight pull, and at this point when I take it off my mandrel, my ring will pretty much stay in the shape that I've created. What I'm going to do then is cut down my sides of my wire so that I just have about a 1/2 inch left. I'm using my wire cutters to do this with the flat side closest to my project. I'm going to cut both sides down a little bit, and this is because I'm going to be gripping the wire and pulling it through the band. The wire here on the side is to the top of the bands. I'm going to push it down so it's going through my band and around to the top. I'm going to switch then to the other side and do the same thing on the other side. The wire goes from the top of the band through the middle of the band and back to the top. At this point, it's a good idea to stick it back on your mandrel and pull it back to that 8 to make sure that you're still within size. You can take it off off the mandrel now, and you can continue wrapping. I wrap about 3 times when I'm doing my rings on the side, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the wire. So I wrap each side, and when you wrap, you do want the wraps to start closest to the beads and go further down on the bands. When I cut most of my wire projects, I cut the wire so that it is hidden underneath or behind my project. For this, I don't like to cut it there behind because what it's going to do is scratch against your skin. So I'm actually going to cut it to the side of my project. So I take my wire cutters, flat side right there, and I'm going to cut to the side of my project. Cut that little piece of wire off, and then I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and just pinch that down a tiny bit. What's going to happen then is actually that end is going to go right to the side. I do this on both sides of the rings, and then your ring is completed. You can put it on, you can wear it. There's other alternatives too, that you can wrap wire in between the beads, and you can do a lot with it. But this is just the basic ring and how you make that basic style of a ring.